Hello, all you out there. This is Between Two Worlds, a podcast about belief, unbelief, and everything in between. I'm your host, Scott Trout, and I'm here with a good friend of mine, as well as a teacher from Improv, Ashley Moore. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Hi, thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. And we had a little bit of tech difficulties in the beginning there, but that kind of goes with the show. When you're working off of Zoom, you're in your living rooms. I've got Naomi behind me. Ashley previously had a whole bunch of laundry behind him. It's just the nature of the game. So Ashley, thanks for joining me tonight. And let's do a little bit of introduction as to who we are and what we believe in.
Yeah.
I'll go first. So my name is Scott. I'm a Christian, as many of you know, and I'm interested in how to create a space where people can respectfully challenge each other, because I want to be respectfully challenged and not just believe what I believe in isolation or around people that believe the same thing, but actually to hear opposing viewpoints that make me think. So that is a huge part of why I'm doing this podcast. And now tell us about yourself.
So I'm in my 40s. I was raised a Christian, pretty devout. I think personally I was like pretty devout. We went to church every Sunday. I went to a Christian primary and high school. But then in high school, I sort of started to think about it, as you do, and as they teach you to, even in the Christian schools. And then I realized a lot of the I guess the tenets of the faith that I was brought up in, I couldn't really accept, or wasn't like 100% sure were true. And so now I would say I'm not a Christian. I don't really hold any specific religious beliefs, but I've always still stayed very interested in religion. So I still like listen to podcasts about religion and from religious people. Especially Christianity, because that's sort of the culture that I know the most, but also Islam, Buddha, various forms of Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, Zoroastrianism, old religions, Scientology, new religions. I find it all very interesting, and also even belief systems that aren't necessarily talked about as being religious as well. Sort of, I guess, political philosophies, even things like what else is there? And this things like to do with like people have views about health and even about politics that aren't necessarily religious, but they're still sort of belief systems with So I'm still very interested in all of that.
Exciting. And then so you listeners out there, you can tell that Ashley and I are speaking the same language, but it sounds very different. So Ashley, where are you from?
I'm from Brisbane in Australia, which is the third biggest city, but no one knows about it because there's no reason why you should.
So you American ladies, cool your jets, calm down. He does sound amazing. First Australian on the podcast, so that's exciting.
Wow.
Ashley, how did you end up in Amsterdam?
So like I said, I'm from Australia. Like I think a lot of Australians, in my 20s, I moved to England, and I lived in London for, I think it was 6 or 9 months or something like that. And I had a good time, but with the weather and just the hectic nature of it, it wasn't somewhere I wanted to stay. So I traveled around a bit, around the world a little bit, and then went back to Australia, and I was there for 10 years. And then I was just like in a phase, I guess, in my 30s, early 30s, where I sort of had split it with my girlfriend and sort of was single for a couple of years, and sort of the work was in a bit of a lull or something, or didn't find it so interesting anymore. And so then I just sold everything I had and went traveling again around the world a bit more. And my brother was living in Amsterdam at this point in time, and so I was in Europe, and so I stayed at his place for a bit. And I said, "Can I come and hang out with my brother who hadn't seen for a little while?" Yeah, and then I was hanging out with him for a couple of months, and then I thought, oh, I might as well stay for a little bit longer. It's nice here. Got an apartment, and thought, oh, I'll go next year. And then the next year, I thought, oh, I'll stay one more year, and I basically just kept doing that until I realized that I'm not going. Yeah. And then I met a French woman, and then we got married, and we have a 5-year-old kid now. So it looks like I am here.
Yeah. No more joking with yourself. It's here
That's
to
right.
stay.
It's home.
Oh man. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I love that. Yeah, you always wanted to leave on the summer or something to, yeah, have a good taste or something of the city, and when the winter rolls around and
Yeah, I'm from a very sunny, warm. It's like I literally, my family was saying, oh, it's 12, it's cold, it's 12 degrees, and they're like, oh, what are we going to do? Having to put on a cardigan is like, that's the indication that you're in the middle of winter over there. And you realize when you're from a warm place, your way of living, you learn skills to deal with being hot. Sorry, and if you're from a cold place, you learn the opposite skills. And I had to learn all these skills. Like it took me 3 or 4 years to learn all of these little skills about how to deal with living in a cold place, like both physically and also sort of psychologically, to deal with the grey and the cold. And
well, maybe I knew that you had been raised Christian, but yeah, you described it as really devout. So walk us through what that meant to you growing up, and what you distinctly remember from that time, things that were influential.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever talked about it because maybe this will come up later, but I teach improv, and sometimes maybe as a teacher, I think I'm a pretty open person and happy to talk about my own personal things to some degree and insecurities and stuff. But sometimes I think, oh, maybe as a teacher, I shouldn't be talking about these things. Maybe for the benefit of the students, they want to have a little bit more of anyway. So I don't think I have mentioned any of that stuff. Just religion seems a safe topic to avoid when you're teaching someone's got nothing to do with religion. But I'm happy to tell people about it if they ask. I guess I was devout in that we weren't like super strict. I think my family was actually quite I think relaxed with rules and stuff like that. But we went to church and we believed it, and especially I think the ethical side, we believed it sincerely. It wasn't just something we did because we didn't do things just because we were Christian, but we believed the message. We believed in all the fellowship of man and the community of Christians and being ethical and follow the teachings of Jesus and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, I think as a family, all the different things, charity and everything. And then I think personally, I was also, maybe this is part of my personality, that if I'm going to be into something, I want to be into it properly. So I was always also very, very concerned about doing what was, finding out what the church or Jesus or whatever wanted or thought was best, and make sure I do it, and also being interested in the actual details of the religion as well, the theology and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's what I count devout.
And so, did you enjoy it? Enjoyed going to church, or when you were around other kids, they were also attending and stuff, or how was that for you?
Yeah, well, it was well, we were Roman Catholics, so the church is sometimes it's not like a real, maybe as experiential as say like a Pentecostal or something. So it wasn't maybe as fun, especially for a kid, as something like that. So sometimes I did think it was a bit boring, but other times, depending on what the service was like, it would be a bit more sort of musical or something, and that was quite fun. But the actual services themselves, I think, were maybe less fun. But because I went to Christian schools as well, I'd say more of the general life of it. I quite liked.
Well, yeah. So what was that like? So, okay. So not only parents believed in Roman Catholic, but then your education. up until I think you said high school was Christian. So yeah, what was that
No,
like?
even high school. I went to a Christian high school as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's just basically learning about. It's just learning about the Bible and the theology of the sect that we were in. Yeah.
Mm.
I guess maybe because later in life, my sister became a Pentecostal, and then so maybe maybe a Pentecostal, or maybe like some of the more Protestants wouldn't consider me devout, because I noticed when she was in Pentecostal, a lot of her everyday speech would be referring to like theology and like Jesus, even just like little things. And we didn't really do so much of that. Like we'd do it and we'd say grace at dinner, and you do some of them, but it's not like it's part of your worldview and your philosophy. You're not like saying it in every sentence. You're not telegraphing or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah. So if I don't know if how that affects the definition of devout, but I felt that we was just as much into it as a system as any. Well, I guess anyone except for the people who are praying 5 times a day and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Going to
Yeah.
church 3 times a week.
Yeah. 3 times in one day. Back again. It's the
Yeah.
evening.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So then, as you enter into more like university, and was there already kind of some seeds of doubt, or was it just kind of something that phased out?
Yeah, I think in high school, like when I really started to, because I was still, like I said, quite devout, and also I wanted to be like right in, and so I was really trying to fit all of the different pieces together of the. Is theology the best word? But like there's all of the articles of faith and all the things you believe as a Christian. Fit them all
Mm-hmm.
together, and to fit that together with the rest of what I knew about the rest of the world. And that happened, I think, through most of my teenage years. And by the end of high school, I was sort of like, oh no, I just can't find a way for all of this to be true. Like all of the things I believe to all be true.
Hmm.
Some of them have to be wrong, or I have to be wrong about them. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then by the time I think I finished university, I was pretty much would say I wasn't a Christian, or even by the middle of it.
And so did you, in terms of how you identified yourself, did you ever put on the mantle of atheist, or did you just always have like I'm not that? How did you handle that?
Yeah, I think, did I? Yeah, I think maybe with the word atheist, I'd sort of go through phases of whether I would say, like if someone asked me if I was an atheist, I would say, yeah, I'm an atheist. But I wouldn't necessarily volunteer it because of, I guess there's various associations. There's a lot of annoying atheists out there, and there's a lot of fine atheists,
Yeah, totally.
And so it's easy if I think so. I didn't just say, I could have just said in the very first sentence, I'm an atheist who used to be a Christian, but I find it's just, if you've got more than 5 seconds, it's just easier to give a brief rundown of what I believe. And
totally.
Because then a lot of people as well, because one thing I notice, if sometimes you say atheists, and then there's some assumption that you like believe in science or something as well, which I find a strange thing. But I don't know how many people think that, but there's a lot of other associations that go with it, or that that you always like Richard Dawkins or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you just like eat Christians for breakfast. You just take a lot of joy from seeing them squirm.
Yeah, but I guess it's the same. Christian, there's a lot of different. Christian can mean a lot of different things, can't it? So
for sure.
Probably even more than atheist, I guess. But
yeah, definitely. And even God, like someone could say, I believe in God, and it really begs the definition of what does that mean for that person?
Exactly. Well, even I remember in high school, like I said, it's like Roman Catholic, who they have like dogma and catechism, and people have this idea that, well, Catholics, everyone believes the same thing, but every friend I had we talked about it, and everyone had a totally different idea about who Jesus was and what God was and what the relationship was. Even though I'm sure if you asked a priest, they would probably say, well, this is the textbook definition. But right. even priests have different views as well, even within the Catholic Church.
Yeah. Well, so I'm curious. You mentioned that there were things that would not. You're trying to fit all the puzzle together, and you're learning different things and theology. And And so what were some of the major pieces that just really started to not fit well?
Yeah, it's hard. There's been, because it's, in a way, it's so long ago now, like 20 years ago or something.
True.
So it's, well, everything I say is probably going to be inaccurate historically, but the one I remember, I was thinking, the first thing I remember thinking was, well, what about people in America before the white people came, you know, before the Spaniards came? What happened to them? All of the ones that just never had a chance, you know? Yeah, or even the ones who did have a bit of a chance, you know, the first couple of generations where they heard about Christianity but had no reason to accept it. Yeah. What happens with them? I guess it's the hell thing, or even the afterlife thing, which is one of the core tenets of Jesus. It's not just an ethical system. A big part of it is like about the afterlife, isn't it? And then so I'd sort of try to find different views of what people thought about this. And there was just so many views about how you fit like an ethical system with this fact about these people. And so that was just one of the things. And now I wouldn't say, it's definitely, that's not the reason that I'm not a Christian, but that was one of the first ones that I thought of as a teenager.
That started to burst the bubble a little bit of like this.
Yeah, it's not as simple as
right, and it's starting to leak water. And any other significant ones?
I think now for me the main one is, because every so often I'll listen to podcasts about religion by people who aren't necessarily of that religion, like professors of religion who sometimes they state their religion, sometimes they don't, but they talk about a religion like in a anthropological sense, like with like no judgment. And then, or listen to podcasts from religious people as well. And then sometimes I go, especially from religious people, oh yeah, that religion makes sense. And then sort of maybe I start believing it for a couple of seconds, but then I think, but what's more likely, that religion is true out of all the religions, or that it's just like a system of belief that humans have made up because we have to have systems of belief to get through our lives. And then I always go, it's probably the second one. It could be the first one, but then I find another religion. I go, well, it could be that one as well. So now I have three choices: these two religions, and the fact that they're all sort of right in some regards and wrong in other regards. So that's the one. That's what I'm. So I guess decided to stick to until I think I can be convinced otherwise.
Right.
That makes sense.
Well, and it's certainly, I think that feeling gets strengthened the more you look into other things. It's a bit easy to have this like confident, no, I have the truth, when you're really not hearing about the other religions or even people who believe different things than you in your own religion. Fascinating. So it shows that you are still very interested in spirituality and theology and belief in God or gods. Why is that? What about you brings you to that subject and keeps bringing you back even after all these years?
It's interesting. To be honest, have I really thought about this? One, I'm just a person who likes to know a lot of stuff. Like I've always been uncomfortable not knowing stuff. And I've always been uncomfortable pretending I know stuff.
Yeah.
So which leaves me, so if I hear about something, I just want to investigate to see, okay, well, what's the situation with that? Is it something I need to know? And then religion is a big one because there's so, like, I'm not religious, but so many people in the world, most people in the world are, and most people in the world have been. So it seems if you're going to be interested in anything, you should be interested in the thing that most people in the world are interested in, you know? You should at least know a bit about it. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons. And I'm interested in people as well.
Well, I was kind of wondering that part because I was like, is it just to always have in your back pocket some nice little factoid or opinion about? But it doesn't seem like that's necessarily it. Like you.
That's not how it started because I got into Improv later, but it's definitely handy to have these things because I'll toss in if you do a scene. I can pretend to be a Shia Muslim if I need to. I just throw in the two things I know about Shia Muslims. I can be a Southern Baptist and have a scene against a an Anabaptist or what's the other ones? The Southern Baptist split off from I can't remember. Yeah, anyway. So there you go. I know all these little details of it.
Right.
That's just a fun bonus.
You're right, though. I forget when I was reading this, but yeah, like, I mean, people throughout the history, they've spent more time thinking about God and our relation to it, him, her. So I think it is worth it. Humanity's been fascinated by that and have longed to understand it.
Yeah.
And it transcends all cultures, time frame. So then, would you say humanity is marching to a place where they outgrow that search, or will it always be there?
I don't really like to make predictions about where things are going, but
the next question I'm asked is, when is the Earth going to end? So
okay, well, I like an answer. But there's definitely trends, isn't there, in some countries becoming less religious and other countries maybe becoming more religious. But it seems the overall trend at the moment, which I'm sure won't last forever, is for countries to become less religious. Even the Muslim countries are now, I think people talk about it being because of the internet. I don't know if that's true, but they're actually going through what like Europe went through like 100 years ago or something, of people either becoming unreligious or becoming a bit more flexible with of how they think about the tenets of the religion that they're in.
Yeah, like a reformed Islam or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or ex-Muslim or something.
Yeah.
And do you feel like that's a good trend? Is that something
positive? I would say it is. Like I would say it is. The one thing, like I was saying, I think there's religions aren't one thing. They're a big grouping of all these different aspects of human nature, and religions aren't all the same. Either they don't all, like some religions don't have a system of law or even a system of ethics. There's some religions that don't talk about how the universe was created or why humans are. I think Judaism, Islam, and Christianity all do, and all of the big ones do now. But there's others that don't. Yeah. And even where was I going with that? Oh yeah. So I think there's a lot of good things in religion, but I think one of the problems with religions that talk about having someone who knew everything back thousands of years ago is that there's some things that they just can never admit that they were wrong about, and or they can, but they have to. It's a very convoluted way of convincing themselves that the original guy didn't say what it sounds like he said. He said something else, and because that's obviously much more better system. So we'll sort of convince ourselves that that's what he said and do that because it's clearly the better way to live, to run a society. Yeah. And so if you don't take things as gospel with air quotes, then it's a lot easier to just I think to improve things when they obviously need improving.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, for sure. Yeah, and there's definitely some examples.
Yeah. And I would say religions do that because Christianity now is nothing like, well, not nothing. It's very different to Christianity from 1200 AD. You know, they're doing it. They're sort of improving and stuff, I think.
Yeah.
From my point of view.
And then what would you say societies are missing in their maybe march to leave religion behind? If anything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing they say about religion is the meaning and purpose, isn't it? Yeah, that's what they say. I'm not sure because I'm not religious anymore. I'm not sure if that's true. That's what they say, but I'm not sure if it is actually true. You have to ask religious people about that. I wonder if there's a lot of religious people as well that don't know what to do with their lives and feel hopeless and stuff. Yeah, and maybe social cohesion, I guess, is a big thing. But then that only works, of course, if the whole society are members of a compatible religion. Yeah. I'm sure there's other things. Maybe this is a deficit in my own philosophy that I can't think of other clear things that religions have besides that. Besides, to me, the great stories, amazing stories. Yeah.
Huh.
and the basis, we had to have them there, I think, to get to where we are now.
Yeah.
That we could then start deciding, this part of the religion, we don't need this as human beings or as a society. We can just downplay that part. Yeah.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
historically,
Yeah. Almost fulfilling the place of like a building block,
yeah,
necessary. And maybe you listened to the episode with Casey about my brother about equality under the law coming from
yeah,
Christianity. And so maybe Christianity was this building block that helped give us this sense of the worth of every individual, and how in Christ there is no difference between male and female, and slave or free, or Jew or Gentile. And so these are some of the building blocks that Christianity put into the world, but then worked over time. They were helpful building blocks, but then maybe as secular humanism started to take control, they like kind of worked off those ideas and then can kind of maybe leave them behind
yeah. That's definitely a possibility.
in the end.
Yeah, I'm also still happy to be told of other clear ways that religions are definitely beneficial.
Yeah. No, I think
But I definitely think that's true what you said.
No, I will probably take a stab at reconvincing you, or just presenting some of the other benefits.
I was listening to a podcast, was it today or yesterday, from a Muslim, and he was saying equality under the law is a Islamic invention. So there you go.
Oh man, you should totally send me that, and I'll pass it on to Casey, because that would be
yeah. And I'm sure Casey could say, well, no, because of slavery and women or something, and the Muslim could say, well, yes, because of the racial things, like racism is like a lot not nicer in Islam. And I remember one thing he said was that because everyone looks towards Mecca, so it's like everyone's equal. Like a king looks towards Mecca, and so does a peasant. And so
yeah, fascinating. I definitely be interested to hear that. Although, what do you think about the argument, since we're on this a little bit, of like the phrase like the proof is in the pudding? Like, one of the things that we talked about with Casey is that you can still see the epicenters of each of these religions: Hinduism in India, Islam in Saudi Arabia, in the Middle East, and then Christianity having worked itself. There is multiple cultural centers of Christianity, depending on if you're looking at Catholicism, but mostly maybe Protestantism. And I feel like it shows like there's a vastly differentness to the societies in how equal they are, or how equality plays itself out.
Yeah. I think that's easy to say. Yeah, I'm not that convinced by that. Like, it's easy to say when you are of the religion in that society. Yeah. But does that mean if you're a Protestant who lives in Africa, then you can have to say, well, no, I don't. Because because even Christianity is supposed to have come from Middle East or Egypt and stuff like this. So, yeah.
No, totally.
It could be, but I can think of a lot of
and it's the argument not necessarily that like it's the places that have been seeped in that ideology for the longest.
Yeah. I guess in a way I also don't, especially, I'll just take Christianity in Europe, because Western Christianity Protestant comes from this Roman Catholicism. Yeah. It's like 10. And so that's one epicenter in a way. But I don't think of religions as separate from the rest of the culture. So yeah. Anyway, I'll leave religions to fight it out, which is the best religion. I just see like there's different cultural areas, and then the Christianity, like say in Europe, there was a lot of elements of philosophy and stuff going around, and Christianity was one of them. And even at the height of Christianity, it wasn't like a megalith across the whole of Europe that controlled the way everything thought. It was still like in tension with other things going on, with like the people who still revered the classical era and local things like the local laws.
Mm.
and things like that. Especially Protestantism contains a lot of, I think, German philosophy, like basically German pagan philosophy. It sort of seeped into it, which is, I think, part of the tension with the Roman Catholicism, which was more of a Latin thing.
Mm.
So that's why I think Germans are, like, Protestantism is much more matter of fact and literal than Roman Catholicism, because Germans are much more literal than Italians.
Oh, interesting.
Again, that's a very simplified version of course, 2000s of years of history. But all I'm saying is it's hard to say that religion created this and then something stepped on top. It's like, well, there's religion, there's all the other things going on in all the other countries, all of their local beliefs and local laws and local systems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And the same in every other country, I think.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. We might loop back to this, but I wanna come back to your story. And one of the things you mentioned is that you've actually looked into many of the other religions as well. So you're really more raised in Christianity, but what were some of the, well, okay, first off, yeah, what are some of the ones that you've looked into, and what did you find interesting about some of them?
Yeah, I'll say, I mean, Christianity, I know much more than everything else, so I'm going to butcher the rest of them. So apologies to all of the other religions, but what's the one? I think probably the one maybe that I know the most about after that is Islam, and it's quite an interesting religion. It's sort of, in a way, it's a bit like Protestant Christianity, where they took Judaism and Christianity and just said, okay, let's take out all the bits that don't make sense and really try to rationalize it and make it all fit together. And I would say they actually did it better than Protestant Christianity. One thing is, I think Islam is quite internally consistent. They, in my mind, it's their assumptions that they get wrong. But once you're in it, it all makes sort of perfect sense. Yeah, and of course there's different schisms. There's different sort of sects of Islam. I don't know what you specifically wanted to know.
Well, what are some of the internal consistencies that you see, and then maybe what are some of the assumptions that you feel like they get wrong? Because I actually don't maybe know.
Yeah, well, they're a bit like some forms of Protestant Christianity. They're like fundamentalists. Like, they have the Quran, which is much smaller than the Bible, but they take it absolutely literary. It's literally written by God. It's not even inspired by God. Yeah? So everything that's said there is true. Every piece of advice is advice for all time, basically. And then they have this like law, like jurisprudence, to figure out how to work in the modern day, given this advice. And I think because the Christian Bible is so much bigger, it's like 30 times bigger than the Quran, I think. And it has a lot of contradictions in it. So Protestants have a harder time, because it's impossible to actually take it all literally. It's also impossible to take the Quran literally, I think, because there is still some contradictions, but it's a lot harder for Protestants, because there's some things that they just disagree about very different things. So they can be a bit more consistent. And yeah, in a way, I think I don't think it gives a better outcome, because some of their assumptions in Islam, I think, are just like totally mistaken. But it's very, very logically consistent.
Yeah, I guess the way that I've heard it described is, Quran is more kind of reflections on God and prayers and praises, and but not as much theology. It's more kind of like reflections back to God or about God, his nature, but then how to live that out as a human, that's more in the hadiths.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
which are more like commentaries kind of on how that relationship works.
Yeah, and is where I get complicated, because then not every Muslim agrees on which hadiths are actually, because they're all just stories about Muhammad, and they don't all agree that they're all true, and that's when it gets. And then in them, because there's so many of them, there's tons of contradictions. That's when they're even keep footing with the Christians, who have like a much bigger text to work with.
Right. Well, and that's maybe one of the, I would say, scorecard throw one of the Christians, but like I do think it's fascinating that they keep it all in there. And that canon, being all the books that are included, has remained consistent since it was put down in its form. And there is a bit of a difference between the Catholic Bible and the Protestant Bible, but those differences are all histories. So the book of Maccabees is not in the Protestant Bible. I don't really know why, but as far as all the New Testament books, those are all the same.
Yeah. I think the New Testament they decided on the books like in 200 or 300 or something.
Right.
And
Like
they got rid of a bunch, and then it stayed the same, like you said, until the 1500s.
And it's significant that they didn't just chuck out the Old Testament. So you have this,
Yeah.
you have Judaism and Christianity, and like they're all like, this is all sacred. It's not like, which I think is pretty interesting. So it does, you kind of have to know the whole bit. But yeah, it's easy to just be like, oh, well, we'll just take out that hadith or that commentary, and that's just not part of it. But yeah, Christianity's really kept it all in.
And for me, as a like an outside observer who's very interested in Christianity, but doesn't have to accept any truth claim about it, it's super fascinating. In the last couple of years, I've been reading a bit about and listening to podcasts about the history of the New Testament, and it's just super interesting. Like I only found out this year that the original text of the Gospel of Mark doesn't have the resurrection. It ends at the tomb, and that's like a later, and that's like pretty accepted by all scholars that aren't of a religious sect that says no, that has to be there. Like there's like 3 or 4 versions of the 4 oldest versions of the Gospel of Mark don't have Jesus appearing, but the other Gospels do. So it's an interesting story. What that means, it can mean a bunch of different things, but it's an interesting just little fact.
Oh yeah, wow.
And there's like thousands of things about the history of this, which I find quite fascinating. People trying to make sense of the world and make sense of all these things that happened back in 33 AD or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Jesus. So, just some short answers or short questions, but yeah. So would you say Jesus was a historical man that actually existed?
I think, it depends what you mean. Depends what you mean by that, though, in a way as well. I think
Okay, well, so I guess was there a person named Jesus who was a Jew living in first century Palestine?
Yeah, well, Jesus and Joshua, it's the same name. So I think in the first century Palestine, there were like probably 1 million guys called Joshua. There was probably a bunch of guys that were crucified by Pontius Pilate who were also called Joshua. And maybe I'll say, and I think in the, probably not really knowing, but I think in the New Testament as it stands, it's probably stories that are a composite of a couple of different guys, maybe a couple of guys called Jesus, and then a couple of other guys who just had cool things happen to them. And they said, let's make this about Jesus because it's such a good, inspiring story. And probably some other stuff that some of them just the compilers made up. Like, yeah.
And so
like Paul.
But don't you feel like there would be more inconsistencies between those stories if that were true?
But there's tons of inconsistencies in, if you just take the 4 canonical gospels, you read them, Jesus is a different sort of person. When they ask him who he is, he gives different answers. He's really super unclear about who he is. Even, like what does Son of God mean? What does Son of Man mean? And even some of his moral precepts, I think, like they're not super clear that they're the same in each version.
Do you have any example of?
I'm trying to think.
I know, I'm putting you on the spot. It's okay.
Yeah. Maybe, I'm sure there's an apology for this, but I came to bring a sword. That's like the clearest one. It's like, what's that doing in there? Like, you can find a way for it to make sense, but if it was really just about peace, wouldn't he just not have said it just to keep things clear?
Come on, Jesus, what are you doing here?
Yeah. And there's some other sort of more subtle ones, but I can't think of them off the top of my head.
But so you feel like a Christian's explanation of that is wanting because of how it's such a different tone from all the other things he said. Although,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, even maybe not the message, but I think maybe the stories about him. There's there's 2 stories about the loaves and the fishes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what's going on there? Like one's 500 people, one's five. Is it? Did he?
5,000, one's 4,000. Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did he do the trick twice, or is it the same story? But one of the other gospels said, "Oh, I don't like the way he's written it. I'm going to change it." Or he heard a slightly different story. It's just
Right.
not clear. You know?
Right.
So that's obviously the same guy.
Although the weird part about that one is that it's recorded twice in, I would think, each of the synoptic gospels. I think they all talk about how he actually did this twice. It seems.
Yeah. So that could be, but it could also be some other. Maybe there's a big argument. Yeah. The other thing that I know, which is not that the story, the best story I think from the Bible, from the Jesus story about the woman taken into adultery.
Huh.
You know that's also not in any of the original Bibles. That's something put in, and to me it seems like it's a story put in by someone else later, because it was put in like hundreds of years after Jesus died. So it's unlikely to be something he said, but something that someone heard and said, this is, because it's just such an amazing moral teaching. They said, come on, like surely Jesus would have said this. Yeah, we'll pop it in and say that he did.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I was quite shocked when I found that out, actually. Yeah, it was only quite recently as well.
Yeah,
And it's why, even though I don't believe he was like God or anything, I still feel a loss to know that he probably didn't say that.
Yeah, it is.
It's like sort of want him to have said it. Yeah.
Man, that's interesting.
But hats off to whoever did. Yeah.
Yeah. Whoever wrote that one nailed it.
Moral truth is true, no matter who said it.
Yeah. Well, okay. So then, still staying on Jesus. So so thoughts on the resurrection? Do you feel like it was made up by his disciples? The tomb. I mean, so yeah. How do you account for like the empty tomb?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't really have any particular opinion on how that story came to be, but it's easy to account for that. It's just a story that someone came up with and everyone told everyone else. Just like the stories about Muhammad, flying to the moon or something like. No, he didn't fly the moon. He split the moon and flew on a horse. Yeah. There's lots of stories.
Yeah, fanciful type. Yeah. And so then, is there anything from your Christian background, teachings of Jesus, that you feel like you still live by?
Yeah, I think most of the ethical teachings I still hold to be true. Like I was saying about the woman taken into adultery and all of that. I think that's
what do you feel like is the lesson from that one that you've internalized?
Well, I guess there's probably 2 or 3 ways to look at it, isn't it? But I take it as don't be so quick. Well, yeah, this is subtle. I think the one I take now is don't be so quick to judge other people. First find out your own moral things. Yeah, but I will find out. It's more morally correct to be looking at your own moral failings than scanning other people for their moral failings. It's interesting because I grew up a Catholic, and in the Catholicism I grew up in, it was very left wing, and which I find funny now, because now whenever you talk about religion, everyone instantly thinks right wing.
Right.
Yeah, like and so I think of and so it was all about the equality and making sure poor people are looked after. And there was even also anti-death penalty, and that story as well. You can read it as it's not really the most plain reading, but and at the time I took that as an anti-death penalty, anti-death penalty story as well.
Yeah, that beautiful moment when he says, "You who are without sin, be the first ones to throw the stone."
Yeah,
and then they all walk away, and he said, like, "Woman, where are your accusers?"
Yeah, it's an amazing story. I've got goosebumps now just thinking about the story.
Yeah. Wow. Well, cool. So then, Ashley, as you reflect back on your life, a good amount of my guests have been more
Yeah.
my life stage. We're kind of entering into our 30s or in the beginning stages of it. What led you, what life circumstances led you into a more spiritual searching place? Like, is there some life moments that um, made you look more into things for like personal reasons, or was it always just kind of on an intellectual curiosity basis?
Yeah. It's funny. I think as far as religion goes, I've always I'm pretty much always been at the same level of interest. And then maybe it is a bit more of an intellectual level. I'm not even sure what spirituality means.
Hmm.
And I don't know whether it's something, whether I'm missing something or I just think of spirituality in a different way.
Hmm. How would you define it?
Yeah, see, I don't even know. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't define it in a way. I think I just take all of the bits that I break it up into the different things
Hmm.
that maybe other people lump into spirituality and just do them separately. Like there's things like, yeah, like this, I mean, is ethics, is that a part of spirituality or is that something different? I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Because to me, I think that's something different. There's like purpose, your purpose in life. There's like a sense of community, I guess. Is that also part of spirituality?
Hmm.
There's that sense of oneness with the world, or
Hmm.
I was going to say nature, but with the world or something, or the greater existence.
Hmm.
And there's also that sense of ego death or flow. Do you know what I mean? Where you lose your sense of personality, and I think a lot of people have that when they're being spiritual.
Huh. Yeah.
Like I know it's a big thing in Buddhism, isn't it? Where you just got to meditate to just not think of everything. But I think Christians also have that in other ways, depending
Definitely.
on the denomination. Yeah. And I
Yeah,
just do them all
definitely.
separately in different ways, I think, and
Okay.
have more need for them in different circumstances as well.
That last one, the flow or the loss of ego, what's your path to that?
Yeah, this is funny because I think this is something you wanted to talk about. I have two ways of doing that. My two hobbies, one is rock climbing and the other is improv. And for both of them, getting rid of your ego and getting into a flow state is one of the biggest things. In improv, like getting rid of your ego is like pretty much everything. And in rock climbing, it's like a skill you need to have to do certain sorts of rock climbing.
I don't know a ton about rock climbing. Can you explain that? That's
Well,
interesting.
it's mostly to if you get maybe it's like not all sports, but one, if you're in a dangerous situation, if you're doing a sort of rock climbing where there's a risk of danger, sometimes you need to be able to get rid of your ego so you can just assess the situation and get yourself out of the danger without just getting angry that you're there. Because being annoyed that your rope got cut isn't going to help you. You have to just say, my rope's cut, what do I do now? Or something like that, as a simple example.
Brief pause on that. I do have a rock climbing. I've done multiple rock climbing, but in Colorado, I hiked a mountain, and well, there's actually multiple big mountains in Colorado. They sound significantly less impressive when we're talking in kilometers because they're I don't know, they're like 4 kilometers or maybe even pushing 5, which that's a big mountain, but it doesn't sound big in my American ears. But they're 14,000 feet, and that's like, yes, that is a mountain.
Wow.
But anyway, hiking that with an older friend of my dad's and my friend as well. But and we hit this one spot where we should have done like kind of an overhang bit of a move, and it should have been really simple. And then what you just back up is like the one little class something move. And I assessed it first, and I was just like, I'm not really sure how to do this. And I saw this wall on the left side, and I was like, oh, that looks fairly simple, and we'll just kind of go up and over this move and then get there. And up on the wall, on the spot where I should have, traversed, moved sideways, I just like, oh, I don't actually know where these holds are. We should go up a little higher and then move over. So he goes up above, skirts around, makes it look super easy. And at that point, and we're not harnessed in. We're just fully, just thinking this is gonna be a simple thing. At that point, I climb up, and then kind of the realization of how high I am on this face, and it is, I don't even know, 30, 40 feet, but enough that I would really be messed up if I fell. And man, I froze. That was probably one of the scariest
Uh,
moments of my life. And so now I'm just up there, which is, I'm expending a lot of energy and I'm shaking because I'm scared. And it's like do or die. Like I can't necessarily go down because I don't have
yeah,
that quite that much energy to be safe about it. I have to move. And the move required me to kind of pull off the wall a little bit to find where my next foothold was. And oh my gosh, it's just the
uh,
scariest thing.
wow,
Uh, but thinking about spirituality, that moment for me, I was praying. Like I was seeking for something
yeah.
beyond what I felt like I was
Interesting.
physically capable of in that
Yeah,
moment.
yeah. To Jesus or to God, like
Yeah, yeah, to
that's how
God.
you were thinking
Yeah.
about it. Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, perfect. That's a perfect example, isn't it? That yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah. So it's
yeah,
those moments, and I think true spirituality needs to not just come in the crisis moments.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but it was very real to me in that moment of, yeah, like
yeah.
it felt like I was given an extra amount
Yeah,
of
okay,
strength that I didn't necessarily have within me
interesting.
to keep
Yeah,
moving.
cool. So
Um,
you felt like that God gave you the strength to do that, to clear
yeah,
your mind to do that move. Oh, that's really cool. That's a great
yeah,
example of yeah what I'm talking about, I guess.
yeah. Well, and then we personally just have a lot of moments like that. Another one is Brianna's back went out. She had a herniated disc, and we're young. I mean, this was we were 27, maybe 26, um, and ton of pain, and she had to commute for her job, which didn't help, um, and months of a lot of pain. She's doing chiropractic and physiotherapy, and we were starting to consider back surgery, which is like a horrible thing to consider when you're that young.
Yeah,
Maybe like a cortisone shot to give it some sort of relief. And we had this one week where, as a church back in Oregon, we were all praying and fasting together. So we would all be fasting church wide. And this is probably like, I don't even know, 300 or more people. And then we'd have these evening services where we'd get together and you could receive prayer. So you'd come in, we'd have like a circle. Boy, this is going to sound maybe weird for ears that don't know this,
no,
guys.
I'm
But
very interested.
yeah, yeah. And so it's just like these beautiful moments. But yeah, they have
Yeah,
this. So we're like just in a circle of chairs and sharing. And then there's a chair in the middle where you can vulnerably go and say, hey, I have need. It's like that act of weakness coming to the middle. Um, and you can receive prayer and people, and laying on of hands, which is like one of my all-time favorite things about Christianity. There's just something like really beautiful about a
yeah,
group of people surrounding you and placing their hands on you. And so anyway, we've been fighting this for months, really trying to help her. I mean, she couldn't even tie her shoes, so I had to help her with that. And she'd have some sort of electric stim on her back as she drove. And and there was one day where in the morning, afternoon, and evening, we had 3 different moments of prayer. One with our students, our navigator students, surrounding her and praying for her. Another with our coworkers, other navigator kind of staff, surrounding her and praying for her, and then our church. And that evening, she felt the most significant pain relief that she had ever felt, even though
wow,
Cairo, all this other stuff, pain medicine. Um, and so it didn't fully heal. I want to like make that clear, but
yeah,
pain was like gone, discomfort was gone, and she could actually be mobile. She could tie her own shoes, and so then as we kind of continued to do physio and chiro, it fully went away, and we have like a MRI of the herniated disc, and um, but yeah, those little moments are the things that really do. It's like I have these multiple parts of my brain. I love the Christian narrative, which is one of the
yeah,
big reasons why it keeps me around. I love the aspect of as it's been done to me, I do to others. And so with the model of Jesus
yeah,
giving of his life, that is the force that propels me to do that for others. And um, so I love that. But then there's also these like actual experiential moments. I could list others, but
yeah.
yeah, for me, spirituality is linked to those as well. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So then I'm wondering, would you be able to? Do you have any of those type of moments where it felt like something outside of the normal realm or the natural realm happened?
I think, yeah, I think I can't think of specific examples, but I think I wasn't in her shoes, so I don't know what she experienced, of course.
Mm,
But I think I have had those same experiences. But because I have a different narrative to explain it, it comes out. It comes out in a different way.
mm,
I do, yeah. Like in both rock climbing and improv, I um, had these moments where where you're just sort of taken over by something else, and you're sort of going. I think it's very common with improv, for me at least, and I think for a lot of people. Afterwards, people will say, "Oh, I liked when you did this and this and this," and I don't have any memory of it, and
mm,
or sometimes I will, but it wasn't me doing it.
mm, mm,
It was something else doing it. Yeah.
mm,
And in my worldview, I would say, well, there's your subconscious that is so much bigger than who you think you are, which is expressing it. And that's how I would explain it. And
mm.
yeah, I'm not going to say it's the same thing, but if you asked me the question, so I'm thinking that's how I would, yeah, explain that. And then I think maybe as well with and if I guess done it in different ways. I was in an improv show once where it was a whole group of people coming from across the world together, and we did the laying on hands
Mm,
thing as well, and it is just this amazing experience
mm,
again. But it didn't have any other narrative except it was a group of improvisers we all had a similar, I guess, view that we wanted to trust each other, and you just feel this thing. And yeah, and I've also especially my 30s, I had a lot of chronic pain as well, and
huh,
if I do improv or climbing, it would actually alleviate it for a bit as well. So there
huh,
you go.
huh.
Maybe not to the same level,
No, it does sound similar. Yeah, I like that. Huh.
but yeah. So that's why I think just shows that for me, these are all beautiful parts of human experience, and different religions explain it in different ways. And to
Mm.
me, they're all valid ways to explain it, as long as it's not hurting anyone else or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
And I will also say as well, I also get that a lot of those feelings when I'm in the desert. I just love deserts. I don't like the beach. I love deserts. And it is funny that the three great world religions all come from the desert. I don't know what that means, but it's
Hmm.
just an association I made.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, that's interesting. That's super interesting. Yeah, I have this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm. Um. All right, Ashley, I think we're nearing the end of our first one, and I wanted to just hear. Um. So, if you were to um give a message for Christians specifically, maybe even like young Christians trying to work out their faith, um, what would you say to them?
It's a tough one, isn't it? Uh, I would say don't be afraid to think through all of the things you believe and see how they fit together, and and that even amongst Christians, there's a lot of different there's a lot of different opinions. So don't be afraid to check out different Christian opinions is definitely worthwhile, because there's even there's 2,000 years of different Christian opinions.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and I would also, if you're up for it, find out, approach other religions, maybe find out, I guess, the basics of other religions with I don't want to say open, I say not judgmentally, like you're not as if you're going to accept them, but just find out about them without instantly at each step saying, well, that's wrong because of this,
Hmm.
that's wrong because of this. Just
Hmm.
listen to them, take them in, and then decide what you think about it later.
Hmm.
Yeah, because
Hmm.
everyone's wrong about a lot of things, including the smartest people in the world and the best people of your religion. I think there's no Christian on earth who believes there's another Christian who knows everything.
Hmm. 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 That's great. That's great. Well, Ashley, we'll end our part one there. A little bit of your story, and I think we'll probably branch back into it. And one of the things that I would love to chat more about is improv,
Cool.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and how Is we both do it. That's how we met. You taught me. And yeah. So there we go. Thanks for joining me for the part 1. We'll take a break and come back. For all you out there, Between Two Worlds, podcast about belief, unbelief, and everything in between. I'm your host, Scott Trout, and thank you for listening. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Let us know what you thought of this video. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or turn on notifications, or check out our Patreon page, or our social media, or do all of them. We're a podcast, so wherever you get your podcasts, give us a listen, whether you're doing the dishes or pooping or walking the dog. We'd love to be there with you. Finally, if you like this video, check out these videos.